You're listening to Rebel Hearts Rising, where we believe your darkest hour holds the key to awakening depth and profound inner wisdom. I'm Tam Burke, and I created this to remind you that when your heart wants to shut down, that's your call to rise, like a phoenix from the ashes. What makes this unique is that every episode is paired with a guided meditation to help awaken your intuition and heal on deeper layers. Together, we'll turn pain into power. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Rebel Hearts Rising. I'm your host, Tam Burke, and I'm so excited because we have the Annie Whitney here with us today. Officially, she is a business leadership and identity mentor, but I know her as the capacity queen, and today we're going to talk a lot about capacity. Annie is the epitome of Rebel Hearts Rising. She has been through so much and alchemized this into a unique story that really helps people see themselves in her, which is why I think everybody in her world rises, including myself. I've hired Annie multiple times because the way Annie sees you, the way Annie actually sees life, and bridges together the very energetic pieces of herself with this very strategic mind. She has the mind of a ninja, is something that is truly to be witnessed. And so I knew that I had to have her on the podcast. And so welcome, Annie. I'm so excited to have you.
I am so freaking excited to be here. And as we all say, those clients that you attract are a mirror. And so I think that speaks volumes to you. And I feel so juicy and excited for this conversation.
Me too. We actually were talking about a few things before we got started and we had to cut each other off and we're like, let's just hit record. This is too good. It's gold. So, Annie, I want you to tell us about what capacity means to you, because I feel like I actually learned a lot about what capacity meant as I witnessed you move through your own life and all the different things that you juggle.
Sure. So one of the simplest ways that I can showcase and share about capacity is that capacity isn't anti-hard work. Capacity isn't just being able to stack my plate so full to just be able to quote unquote hold more. Capacity is the ability to not hold anything, but conduct everything you desire, almost like an orchestra, where we become the conduit for all of the things that we desire in life and maybe some of the things that we don't desire, right? Our life and our capacity is by design. And I wholeheartedly believe that your energetic, both your subconscious and conscious decisions and mind influence all of it. And so even a year ago, my capacity was probably 1/10 of what it is now. 5 years ago, I was burned out at my corporate role as a consultant, doing what I did not have kids. I was in a relationship. I was with, my partner that I'm with now, man of my dreams. My life on paper looked really fucking perfect. I went out to Michelin-starred dinners. I could order any clothes I desired. I could travel wherever I wanted to go. My husband and I went on this beautiful trip to Europe. It wasn't that I wasn't unhappy or that I wasn't happy. I was burned out because there was a misalignment in my core heart mission and the values that I was living. And I was just helping another corporation make money. And I was not fulfilled in the work that I was doing and bringing to life. And so it was only this calling that led me to start my business when it made sense to no one else in the height of my career as I'm being promoted and leading a team, and postpartum in the pandemic to start a business. Everyone's like, Annie? And so it's like seeing then versus now, it's like, it's really hard to see yesterday versus today in capacity, but it can expand in that amount of time. And it's how quickly you make decisions, the energetic and strategic leaks that are happening in your everyday life, from when your mom calls and you get derailed, from a friend that you can't hold boundaries with, or a client you can't hold boundaries with. And so I could go on and on, but I think you get in the essence of what I teach is capacity is your ability to move through life and not get lost in the fucking sauce.
I mean, if it's delicious sauce, we like to swim around a little bit, but the sauce that feels,
I love sauce.
The biscuits and gravy stuff that you're like, I don't think so. This is why I wanted to host you on here, is because I really believe that Rebel Hearts Rising is about how much we can hold until our hearts shut down. And then inevitably our hearts do shut down. There are moments where imperfect people, we're constantly growing. And so it's like, how do you rebel against those moments to open up your heart, to lean into the things that are uncomfortable? And one of the things, Annie, that I love that you said is it's counterintuitive, but actually sometimes putting more on your plate that's in higher alignment with who you are will increase your capacity. Because so often I see women that have a ton of things on their plate, but they're not fulfilled. Like their hearts aren't glowing and radiant. And that's where we can get into a lot of trouble with capacity, is how much of it is filling you versus how much of it is something that you're simply just managing and moving through and, kind of like almost moving to the side so that you can get to the things that light you up. And one of the things that I've learned from Annie about capacity, and I'd love for you to riff on this for us too, is something that you say often is like pressure is a privilege, and leaning into understanding how when we bring different perspectives into our life, we actually create a different feeling around it. This is ultimately the frequency work that we talk about. And so what's really cool about me and Annie's work is I think Annie talks about it from a more strategic lens, and I talk about it from a more energetic lens, but we're always kind of talking about the same thing.
I love that too. I just got goosebumps. And it's pressure is a privilege is like the moral inversion where most people run from pressure. Most people see pressure or fear as a red light. And it's like, ooh, stop. That's uncomfortable. That's a contraction. I've been taught my brain is wired to keep me safe. And so therefore that is a no, right? Where pressure is a privilege. There was this moment, and I actually gave a speech on this in Canada a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago at this point. And I was talking about this moment, and it's still so vivid for me, where I was standing in this dream home that we moved into a year ago. And so it was last spring. And we had just realized both of my girls' schools were closed the next day. It was like teacher conferences. My husband was at a really tough job. He had to go downtown. I had my clients in this business. I was a VP at a billion-dollar corporate valuation startup. I always like to provide context. It matters. And my Slack was going off. I had a leadership meeting in 15 minutes. The girls were home. One of my girls was screaming for one of her lovies, and one of them was asking me to hold her. And I felt so overstimulated. And whether or not you have children, you've all had a moment like that where you feel like, I'm not going to not drop a ball. I just can't drop the glass ones. Like, how do I actually hold myself in this moment? And it was this really quick perspective shift that it was like, everything that's happening right now, everything that's vying for my attention are all things that I chose. And it's like, this is actually a fucking privilege that I have two beautiful children. I'm standing in my dream home. I get to work from home. I have clients that desire and need me. I have this meeting that's happening, and it's like, it's all going to be okay. This is such a privilege. And it was in that split moment where I was just like, I can handle all of this. And it was almost in that decision, in that perspective shift, that I created the capacity to handle that day. And I felt like a fucking queen at the end of that day. And let's not belittle the fact that I was still overstimulated. I was still overwhelmed. I'm very much a human, but it was just the perspective shift that made myself be able to manage it without having a panic attack.
I love this. And one of the things that I've also witnessed you do is that you have a lot of self-care. And I think that that's a really important thing to bring into this conversation, because one of my fundamental methodologies is grounded spirituality. And there's two places that this came from. One, I'm as woo as it gets. Like, I'm an outlier in the woo world for sure. And so it's super great if we have woo conversations, but like, what the does this stuff actually mean? And like, what is the tangible, actionable, specific things that we can do to understand this? And the second thing is what Annie had talked about earlier, is talking about how much energy we have coursing through us. And in order for quite literally like power energy to run, it has to be grounded first. Let me give you an example. If you plug your hairdryer in Europe, like, you're going to blow shit up. And so what we're talking about is literally grounding, but increasing our capacity for the voltage that's flowing through our life. And so, Annie, I know that one of the things that you do is run, so you move your body, but I also know that you are big into some mantras in your head while you're running, meditation. And so tell us about how your self-care grounds this ability to hold as much capacity as you do.
Okay, I love this question, but I would be also remiss not to share that I've always been a very devoted human. And so when I say I'm going to do something, I've always been the embodiment of what I say I'm going to do. And so there was a time where I did CrossFit up until 39 and a half weeks pregnant with my first child. But I don't know that that was out of a lens of self-care. It was to take care of my body, but it was because I was shitting all over myself. You should do this. You need to be in good shape. You need to take care of yourself. Like, this is how you do it, and you're going to do it every day. Versus now, where it comes from this place of gratitude for wanting to feel strong for my children, wanting to feel strong for myself, wanting to get 8 hours of sleep. And so it's a choice, but the way you make the choice and the decisions matters and influences how it feels, right? So now I have the discernment to decide, actually, I'm really tired today. And this is not to know when it's an excuse, right? Versus when it's, I'm going to really honor my body today and I'm going to take a break and maybe I'm going to get outside and take a walk and move it differently. And so now my self-care comes out of devotion instead of shoulds, which makes all the difference in the world. And it makes you make better decisions for yourself that align with your energetic frequency. And so what do I typically do? I like to make a schedule because I train for races. I'm a run coach on the side as well. And it's like, I know when I need to scale back and listen to my body. It's like maybe getting sick, or I know when I have the capacity to push harder. And so most mornings I get up and honor myself at 5:15, 5:30, and I either run or I have a basement gym because I love lifting weights and keeping my body strong. And so they both support each other. And every single day I do a meditation, whether it's a seated meditation, a walking meditation. It's almost like this addiction, this very healthy addiction where it's like, it's the law of attraction, right? Whatever your thoughts start in the morning, like I love to start it with a meditation because I know how important it is the way you start your day. And so because I get up and moving, it's like I can't really do that in bed with my husband. I found these running meditations I'm obsessed with, or if I go work out down there, I'll do a seated one as I'm like stretching my body. And that has made a 180 in everything. When I'm having an overwhelmed pressure as a privileged day, I will be like, you know what I could really use right now? 4-minute meditation. And it changes everything.
I love that. Something that you said reminded me of, I work a lot in the shamanic world, and the hummingbird teaches us about where we source nectar from in life. And you don't see the hummingbird flying around being like, oh, I should find nectar. It just knows that in order to increase the speed of which its wings flap, the way that it moves through the world, it needs to find that sweetness. And so I think your distinguishment between CrossFit and like shooting on yourself and moving into places and spaces that feel like nectar and recognizing, okay, I might need to move my body every day. And whether that's rolling around on the floor, stretching, or home gym, or full on run, or whatever that is, you've kind of alchemized the sensation of the masculine pushing into the feminine receiving from your practices. What is it that you think created that shift for you?
It was, of course, never just one thing, right? I think having children, honestly, and the pandemic really was a forcing function for a lot of this, where I had been in this regimented routine. I had also, at the time, it goes hand in hand. I'm very into nutrition and self-care, but it's like it was very masculine. It was shooting. And a lot of it had to do with physique and how I felt about myself. And so it's like it went after I had children. I was like, I don't desire to track my macros. I don't desire to spend my very precious energy on this. I know my body well enough. I have learned the nutrition for my body, how it really feels like energetically supported. And so I just made this decision of like everything that I'm going to be doing moving forward has to be something that is a full body yes, and all is in support of my energy. So it was this perspective shift, which helped cascade my decisions behind it, right? And so it was like, I'm no longer doing that. That freed up more capacity. And then making these aligned decisions that just felt good. I still desired to lift weight, but I did it at home. So I wasn't driving to and from and wasting 30 minutes of my time, because to me, what was important was the time at home with my family. And so just bought some extra heavy weights, made it work for me. And so I think a lot of that was grounded in this self-trust and priorities and what's important to me.
It also sounds like you ultimately learned about capacity through bringing more capacity onto your plate. Having kids is ultimately a capacity equation, isn't it?
Yes.
As you have more of that, you recognize the things that you held before that simply aren't in alignment. And so I think this is also what ties into the first part of the conversation where we talked about it doesn't always make sense to bring in things when you're already at capacity. But when you're so filled up by the things that are in your life, it makes it evidently clear what you can no longer hold on to.
Yes.
Something that I want to ask you as the capacity queen is, for you, where does spiritual bypassing come into play? Because I know a lot of people will say with capacity or like pressure is privilege that it can be spiritual bypassing. How do you make space for big feelings, emotions, for being a human within this whole idea of capacity?
I think it's a muscle you have to learn to flex, meaning when I say lost in the sauce, it's how do I define that, right? Because I honor myself when I'm having a hard moment. I was just telling my mentor last week, I was like, I had a moment in the shower this morning where my mind started going to this place of like, oh gosh, should I do this? Should I bring this to life? And I found myself asking me these questions. I was like, this isn't really serving you, but you're allowed to honor, okay, where do we think this came from? Or is it because you're scared of this? And I think I'm definitely not someone that emotionally bypasses like myself or my clients because I think it's learning discernment of like the why behind it. It's like, why am I feeling this way? And so it's honoring yourself to feel this way. And then it's the action that you take after that that really, really matters, right? And so I think it's, are we just going to let ourselves live here or are we going to take action to solve for whatever we're feeling? And we're talking in generics here. And so when I have a specific example, it's so much easier for me to speak to. But it's like I know in my own wobbles, I generally can discern and understand, okay, this is, I'm having this moment. Stop trying. An old version of me would have been like, you're fine. A lot of it, the shadow work that I've done, it's like, you're fine. And then it's recognizing, oh, I see my inner child. She's like, needs to be validated. She wants to be heard and she's stamping her foot. She's not getting that. And it's like, I understand it. And so instead of being like, ooh, you're bad, it's like, I see you, but you're not going to run the show, but I hear you. Like, it feels good to be validated sometimes. And so not making myself wrong for it has been really, really helpful for me. And then making action otherwise of being like, but you're not my truth necessarily here.
Something that I think is really important too, if you're just listening to this, when Annie was talking about it, she started to point and touch her body a lot. And I think this is something that we don't always talk about, but one of the lenses that I teach intuition is through recognizing what's happening in your body. And this is quite literally embodiment. And so when we're present in our body and we start to feel stuff coming up and we can plug back in and we can essentially do parts work and feel the different versions of ourselves, we're better able to sit with the feelings that need to be felt and hold them and allow them to have their experiences. Because I don't have children yet. When I do, Annie, I might be calling you a lot. But from what I know about children is it's not about fixing their emotions. It's about letting them be with it, creating space for the tantrum, and then still moving along with what the plan might be anyways. And that's what I really hear you saying, is talking about allowing your inner child, or it can be high school version of us, 20-year-old version of us, whatever, have that experience, but still be in the driver's seat so that we're not going unconscious, letting a previous version of us that has wounding come forward and take control.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree. It's what was the plan all along? That doesn't mean our plans are rigid and can't change, right? There's so much nuance here, but it's what was the standard? What was the thing that I said that I was going to do? And just because the outcome, maybe you're in the middle of a launch and no one signed up in week 1 or 2, and you thought like 20 people were going to sign up. And instead of, you're allowed to have a tantrum, right? We all have feelings, but it's like, but I'm not going to allow that to let me take my foot off the gas. I'm not going to allow that to validate the thoughts of what if no one cares? What if I'm not good enough? Because those are just thoughts, right? Emotions are emotions. And so we follow it with the logic of, well, let's not make this a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's not make this be the outcome of this has failed. It's what people really desire to see is the full conviction without the external validation. So I'm going to put my foot on that gas even more because we have to activate ourselves. It is our responsibility to be convicted in our own work and to be validated in ourselves before anyone else validates us. And so not to say that it doesn't feel good, okay? Like human nature, we want to be seen. We want to, community is so important. So not making yourself wrong for desiring that, but knowing that you have to feel that first and that trust first. And then that is when others are going to get bought in on you. And so if you can recognize this frame when you're feeling the feels and keep going, then you're probably going to get the outcome you desire. And I've had so many clients, myself included, go through this where it's like, the fuck? Why are people not jumping in on this? Like, this is incredible. And it's like, you keep talking like that. They will. And yes, there's strategic refinements to be made, but so much of this is your self-belief and what you believe is possible for you, right? Your life is a mirror. Your results are a mirror. And sometimes when I don't like the mirror, it like, I don't get angry at it, but I'm like, okay, what are you trying to tell me here?
I love that. Annie's part of my challenge, Sexy, Rich, Wildly Fulfilled. And in the pregame on day one, we essentially talked all about how our self-image creates our reality. What you think about yourself dictates how your outer reality responds to you. And so if you listen to what Annie is talking about, you're allowed to have the feelings. And something that I often say about emotions are messengers. And people are like, what the does that mean? Because emotions at first are scary and overwhelming and big, but emotions actually ride in on a cloud of smoke. And it's only until the smoke settles that you actually understand the message. So when you heard the example Annie was talking about with the launch, what happens is we start to feel all these uncomfortable feelings we might give up. But if you actually have the patience to continue through that, you see, oh, the uncomfortable feelings were about my own rejection, were about the way that I see myself. And it's only when you have that patience that you allow that smoke to settle, do you get to actually see the places in you that still have room for growth. Recently, Annie, in my business, I've been saying, you know that slogan when people rescue dogs, like who rescued who?
Yes.
For my business, my new slogan is like, who's growing who? Because I feel like I'm growing tremendously as a human being about how I think about myself, what I believe to be available to me, etc. And I'm definitely growing my business. Absolutely. And so it's like this really juicy two-way street. So I'd love
Ooh, I love that.
Thank you. How has your business grown you in the last year? Especially because I feel like you've been on a little bit of a quantum leap in the last at least 6 months.
Yeah, I would say almost since the beginning of this year, where it was this, and I tell this story a lot, where I went to an in-person experience last November, so almost a year ago. And it was kind of on a whim. I didn't know, I had never met anyone there in person, and it was all entrepreneurs. And I remember sitting side by side with other 7, 8-figure, massively successful entrepreneurs and sitting next to them. And I had realized how I'd been subconsciously pedestaling these other individuals when I thought that I hadn't been. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, no, I don't pedestal them. And then you get up close and personal and you're like, oh, I had. And admiration and pedestaling are two different things, right? Like, I admire you, Tam. I don't pedestal you. And so at this event, I came home and I had such a massive amount of conviction, because this realization that I have not been owning how fucking incredible I am, and that I have more experience and more skills than like 90% of the people that I encounter. And this is not me saying I'm better than anyone. This is me actually seeing where I was not owning the skill set and brilliance that I have available to me. And so after that, it was more just like pedal to the metal. And that has been my biggest gap. Is I've always been good at storytelling. Yes, it's been a refinement. Capacity has been something that is, continuing to expand. But for me, this quantum leap was the embodiment of who I really am, and the capacity to hold that, the capacity to say and take ownership over that, right? That's leadership identity. So it's getting clear in your leadership identity so that you can tell the stories and have the capacity to actually hold everything you desire. And so it was this culmination of all of those things that happened. And it's been like a snowball. And it's never just one thing, right? It's been a deepening of every single aspect of that over the course of this year. And so I'm not going to lie, I'm like, what question did she just ask me? Because I got so excited to tell this story. But I think in essence of the quantum leap, if you will, that was what started it.
I love that. It's really interesting because I had all these podcast women scheduled, and I feel like all the conversations that I've been having on the podcast have been selling my challenge, because this frequency method is really about the way that you see yourself. And I'm not releasing exactly what it is until day 3 of the pregame just to keep you guys hype. But it's all about seeing yourself with clarity and actually feeling it in your body. And what you hear Annie talking about is, actually, I want to pause before that. Annie, could you go a little bit deeper on the difference between admiration and pedestalizing, and also what that feels like in your body?
Ooh, I love that question. Okay, so admiration for me is just massive amounts of respect for who someone is as a human and their genius and skill set, their integrity, their heart, just me really seeing that human. And that doesn't mean I don't look up to them. Like admiration, I can still look up to you because I value your opinion and the words that you have. And it's like, we've talked about this a lot, Tam, like we've hired each other. And it's like, because we have this mutual admiration and respect for each other's zone of genius and what we were put on this earth to do. It's our life artistry, right? Whereas pedestalization, if that's even a word, pedestaling someone, I like to make up words here and there. But like pedestaling someone is thinking that they know better than us. And it's very easy to give your power away when you think that someone has your own answers. It's thinking someone knows better than you, knows more than you, has something that you don't. And so I think it comes from this place of lack. And it comes from this place of they need to tell me what to do. They know the answers. It's like I relate it to almost this frequency of weight loss in America and the instant gratification where we want something. So we're placing our power in someone else, like lose fat quick, right? It's like we all want the crash course. And so I almost think that pedestaling someone and giving your power away allows you to believe that the answer is not inside of you.
I love this. I want to drill down even farther. Let's say that I have never started a business before and I'm going to hire you as my business coach. Technically, you do know more than me, right? If I hadn't had a business, if I didn't have the background and experience that I had. And so how do you relate pedestalization? This is now a new word. If it's not in the dictionary, Anne and I have put it in there.
We have now redefined.
How do you relate to that when someone truly does know a subject? Like, let's say also if somebody came to me and had never explored energetics or frequency or intuition. So how does that work?
Okay, I love that question too, because yeah, you're a genius in your own right. You do know more than me and intuition and energetics. So it's the lens with which I see you, right? Where I'm not just like, figure out my energetics. What do I do here? You tell me what I need to do. It's almost coaching versus mentorship. And it's thinking that because you know more than me, therefore you're better than me. It's that layer of nuance. Because you know better. It's also the person that's put themselves on the pedestal, how they view themselves. And so I think it's the relationship between the two, because it's, yes, I may know more than you in this area, but I don't believe that I'm better than you, have all the answers, and that you need to do it my way. I believe it's co-creation together. And so I think it's really the relationship that defines the pedestal.
I like how you talked about this because energetics is absolutely a two-way street. And so this also, I think, leans into fixing and saving and also starts to awaken the relationship of codependence, feeling like we can be saved by someone. Really, we're talking about the unhealed feminine, the desire to give up our problems to someone else and hope that they're solving them. And I love that you brought up coaching and mentoring. Can you tell us how you see the difference between the two of those as well?
Sure. So I do both. And so how I see it is coaching is helping someone arrive at their own answers. It's asking reflective questions. It's diving deeper into what are the beliefs that you actually have about this, and let's pull them out of you. Let's pull out your perspective. Let's really see what you believe to be true, but also showcasing and sharing mentorship based on me having your best interest at heart and me knowing what you desire, giving feedback and direction and some consultancy of what I believe would be best for your business and brand. And it's always caveated with, this is what I believe would be best for you. And then asking a question, right? It's not just go do this. It's, hey, grounded because everything is still grounded in my experience as a human. And so it has to be this relationship where there's so much trust, that yes, I have your best interest at heart, but you have to follow your intuition and knowing of what's best for you in that moment and be able to discern that alignment. And so we're getting really meta here, which I love. But I think in that relationship, coaching is helping you arrive at your own answers, and mentorship, leveraging coaching, helps you arrive at those own answers laced with what I believe to be true for your brand.
I think this is also why therapy can fall flat. I have a therapist who I love, by the way, so I'm not knocking therapy, but I often hear women will come to me and they say, like, in a few months of being mentored by you, I've grown more than 10 plus years of therapy. And I think part of what we're missing, and I think a lot about, is when we used to be in tribes, we had people who were giving us their opinions, who are part of our daily lives, who were weaved into the tapestries of our own experiences. And I find that, excuse my language, we're kind of like raw dogging it out here a little bit. You know, we're doing things alone. We're not really sure what we're doing. And this is why I believe so deeply in coaching and mentorship, is because it's an acceleration pathway. It's a way to get you there significantly faster. Something that I've experienced and that I'm really cautious of, and I still sit in inquiry with, is, you know, I do intuitive sessions. And so I'll often connect to someone's higher self, and I'm receiving messages, and this can be validated. Like, they're like, I literally journaled this morning. I literally said this to a friend yesterday. And so where does the ethical line come in around mentorship and someone's higher self telling me something, relaying that information? It's still always channeled through the lens of Tamara Burke. It's coming through my mouth, right? And so how do you, I just want your opinion on that in general. And I wanted to introduce kind of ethics and integrity as our last conversation.
Ooh, that's juicy. So I think my opinion, I want to ground that in it, of the context of where is the line there. I think when someone decides to work with you and signs not just a actual documentation of contract, it's also a soul contract. And it's with the understanding that this is still filtered through me, right? It's me speaking to your higher self, but it's filtered through my body, my mind, my soul, my intuition. And so it's that mutual understanding and mutual respect is what I believe. And when you have that, when you start on that common ground, it's like we start on the same page, then it's a co-creation moving forward. And it's that understanding that, of course, it's always going to be a co-creation. I'm not transcribing, right? There's a difference in transcribing. It's like I used to do medical scribing. It's like literally word for word. That is not what's happening. This is almost like a translation, which is different than transcribing. And so that's kind of the nuance with which I see it.
I really love that. I think it's also why I started to really focus on teaching women to experience their own intuition, because a lot of what I say shouldn't come as a surprise unless you are not doing any kind of inner work whatsoever and you are full on blocking your intuition, which absolutely happens. And something that reminds me, earlier this year, I hired Annie for a difficult client situation, and something that I really valued about Annie, and I hired her again. Actually, we have an intensive soon. Annie is really good at helping you pull the threads on what's happening within you. And I find that to be something that is really valuable and something that is really powerful in the lens of how we look at coaching through integrity, is moving into identifying where people are stuck. We all have blind spots. That's why it's so powerful to have a coach too, but also allowing someone to have trust and faith. And like I learned in couples therapy a few years ago, is if you assume the best of someone, if you assume that the intentions are to help, that is something that also really changes the coaching relationship.
That goes back to perspective too. What's your perspective? And it's learning to qualify people that you work with too. And that also goes back to intuition, which is, and it goes back to integrity of, are you just opening up your wallet for anyone that will come into your world? And I have become incredibly discerning with who I work with, because for me, yes, money is a natural byproduct of my work. And the more money that I make, the more impact I know I'm making, because I know that I'm heart-led and I'm full of integrity. But all of that to be said, it's like, It's the people that I know that I can help because their EQ is at a certain place, their business is at a certain place. Like I know that I'm able to help move the needle forward and help them evolve and grow. And so it comes back to the integrity of when you say yes or no, not just for that human, but before for their transformation, whatever the transformation you offer in your business is.
I think that bringing in money is a really important way to view all of this, because something I think about a lot is our clients in the coaching world, mentoring, transformational space will often say what a big impact we've had on their lives. But they also have a huge impact on our lives because financially, if they're not providing the resources, we're not able to do what we love. And so there's this bridge through a financial equity of why paying someone is so important, is because it allows a transfership of energetic harmony in the way that we're sharing resources, the ways that we're promoting one another, the way that we're moving into how we allow each other to experience one another. And one of the things that I really value in what you said is how we work with one another, how we vet one another. And it takes time. I think we want, speaking of ethics in the coaching world, a lot of coaches talk about we want people to move quickly and we want to sign clients quickly. But actually the best coaches that I've worked with, it's been a long-term relationship that's formed where I try their free offers. I'm in their free Telegram space. I'll do a challenge of theirs. And I really get to vet this person with who they are. And as each time trust climbs, I find it easier and easier to pay more to this person to invite them deeper into my own life too.
I love that. And I think it's the energy, the industry is obsessed with speed. And I do see value in speed. Like I do see value in not wavering when I know I want to join a mastermind, even if it is, 16K or joining a space. But I think that what comes into play is I think a lot of people are focused on the net new sales versus the depth. Oh my gosh, you have rainbow behind you. Of course you do. But it's the depth of relationships that come with client experience and retention to what you're speaking about. It's also that not everyone purchases the same way. And so if you're only speaking to someone that moves fast, you're going to push away everyone else. And it's like, I do work with women that move fast. I also work with women that I've literally been flirting with for 4 weeks, and I'm not going to overcome the objection in my DMs to manipulate them into buying from me for the wrong reasons, right? I had a client, I remember so vividly, it was earlier this year in January or February, and we did a 3-month intensive instead of a long-term program. And to provide just a little context, she had come out of financial debt and she was so scared to go back into it. And so we had a conversation for 2 weeks. It wasn't like all day, every day. She just needed to be sure of it. And I remember reflecting back to her, the first thing she said to me, I said, I'm not going to convince you either which way. It needs to be a yes from you. I understand where you're coming from, but I want to reiterate one thing. The first thing that you said to me in your voice message is I told myself I was going to invest in a one-on-one coach. I told myself it was you that I wanted to invest in, and I was going to hold myself to that standard this year. And I said to her, I said, whether you decide to work with me in my mastermind and an intensive in any which way, I just want to reflect back the standard that you set for yourself in the start of this conversation. And so for me, she ultimately ended up working with me. She's incredible. We still chit chat here and there. And she worked with me in that space and it was amazing. But I think it's, if I had pushed her, if I had forced her, it's like maybe she wouldn't have even signed, but she wouldn't have felt safe. And so it came from a place of, and I also want to be so clear that I'm not judging others who do things a different way. This is what I believe to be true and integrity for my business and brand.
I think it's powerful that you reminded us, the universe loves speed. When we're in alignment, and that's the big caveat, right? When our intuition is guiding us on something and we sit on it, that's one of the most painful things that happens. To really doubt ourselves, to linger in distrust of self, something that will really hurt us. This is why my frequency method, I feel like everyone's watching me go through a quantum leap, is because when we see ourselves fully, the self-trust that we have, the speed of which we can move, everything that we orient towards is powerful. But if you're not in a place of self-trust, if you're not in a place of alignment or intuition, and you're moving quickly based off of fear or lack, I think those are the places that can get us into trouble, not only as the people making those choices, but as coaches or mentors who allow people like that into our space, because inevitably there's going to be a sense of discomfort or a sense of regret. And so managing how we allow people to make their own decisions, how we empower people to be in decisions, and also how we manage the energy in our own spaces to make sure that it's in alignment for us too.
I agree. And I think it's also sometimes people place blame for their decisions when their feelings change, right? I have definitely had shiny object syndrome before. It came out of a place of impatience and ego and wanting things to move quicker. And so I invested. And do I regret any of those? No, because I learned such a massive lesson, but not everyone views things that way. And so some people move that way. Maybe it was in my space, maybe it's someone else's. It was an integrity to work with that human at the time with where they were. And then sometimes people's perceptions change. They don't put in the work. And then they're upset that they didn't get the outcomes they desire. And that's not to say that it's more of, I believe that ethics is the line of people have to make their own decisions. But I think that there is a fine line in marketing where it's gaslighting or maybe context that purposefully leaves out some points that are really important. And like, I think it's just a very fine line.
I agree. Annie, this was such an amazing conversation. I feel like we could talk for days.
Oh, yes.
But we'll cut it off here. We'll save things for later. And where can people find you, and what do you have coming up this year? Maybe like crystal codes that people might be interested in.
Oh, yeah, that old thing. Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at @AnnieWhitney_. And I am launching with one of my soul business partners a live event in Santa Fe the last weekend of January to crystallize your 2026 like next level of abundance. This is embodiment. This is wealth coding. This is all of the energetics meets brand strategy, untamed storytelling, actually the culmination of what is required of the whole human to actualize your massive vision. And so this will be in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Tam, we have not announced her formally, but I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag. Tam will be there doing a facilitation of something incredible. I'm going to keep that top secret for now. The quality and caliber of humans that are already signed up for this event, we are over 55% sold out. I am just so excited for this. So yes, you can find me, shoot me a DM, you can message Tam, but we would love to have you there. If this conversation resonated, I know that event will resonate with you.
Awesome, Annie. Well, and if you always need anything from me, if this landed for you, if you have questions for either of us, we love to connect with people. That's why we're in the businesses that we are. So send us a DM. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you soon.